Check out FlipsideGaming.com for all your gaming needs. Use the promo code HEROES to save 10% on all orders over $10 and support the channel at the same time. Hey there, this is John from Heroes and Legends, and welcome to the 5th day of Guilds of Ravnica previews. And yet again today, we are going to recap all the cards that were previewed over the course of the last 24 hours or so, and give you some quick analysis of each of them. Quickly before we get started though, just a fast reminder, if you check out the description below, you'll find a few ways to help support what we do here. Our Patreon page is linked down there. You're also going to find links to products on Amazon. If you make any purchases, once you go through that initial link, we'll get a small percentage for the channel. Finally, Flipside Gaming still offering a promo code for our viewers. Hopefully you can save a little cash while you support us. But as always, thank you not only to the folks that look at those links, but to all the viewers. I sincerely thank you for everything you've done for the channel. So let's get into it. Hunted Witness. This costs a white. It's a human common 1/1. When this dies, you get a 1/1 white soldier creature token with lifelink behind it. So in limited, this is a good card. I don't know if it's always going to make my cut. I'm not going to really play it outside of limited, I don't think. This is not Doom Traveler. The appeal of Doom Traveler for me was the fact you got a 1/1 flyer. This being a 1/1 lifelink, it's not as impressive. It is playable though, especially if you have a deck that's either looking to play some quick small creatures because maybe you have some nice convoke spells, or if you're in a situation where maybe you're looking to mentor some smaller things and attack in and just be aggressive and try to have a 1-drop to get yourself started, then it's going to be fine for you. The persistence is kind of nice too. When it does die the first time, your opponent hasn't necessarily taken care of the problem completely. And the lifelink will work really well with Mentor or with an Anthem effect or something like that. So it's not for every build necessarily in limited, but I see a lot of circumstances where I'm happy to play it. Ledev Guardian. This is a white and 3 human knight common with Convoke 2/4. 2/4s for 4 are like kind of mediocre. They're curve fillers. Like you don't want to play them, but sometimes you turn around, you look at your CL pool and you're like, okay, I need another creature that has at least a little bit of defense behind it, and you throw it in there. Giving this Convoke doesn't make it all that much better. Maybe it comes out on turn 3 instead of turn 4. Still a 2/4. Nothing super exciting here. Again, if I need the curve filler and I'm real desperate, I'll go to it, but I'm going to try to avoid this one if I can. Loxodon Restorer. This one's costing 2 white and 4, Elephant Cleric common 3/4, Convoke. When this enters the battlefield, you gain 4 life. So this is yet another limited card, but this one I'm really not too excited about. Here's my issue. It costs 6 for a 3/4. Granted, it does have Convoke, but so many times in limited, you're probably just going to play this for 6 just because you're going to draw it later in the game. If you draw it early and you can cheat it out slightly quicker, you still only have a 3/4. Okay, you gain the 4 life. That could be relevant, especially against an aggressive deck, but what I'm going to do with this card is not play it if I can help it, and then sideboard it in against that aggressive build that's doing a lot of early damage to me. Other than that, like I said, I'm going to try to find something a little bit better. Hellion Patrol. This is going to cost a white and 3, human knight common 2/3, flying, vigilance, and mentor. This is going to be a better limited card than many of the ones that we talked about today. Still relegated to limited, but I like these stats a little better. 2/3 for 4, flying, vigilance. That alone, I'm on board. I'm going to play that a lot of the time, especially in sealed. Now, the mentor might not always be amazing for you because at least the way the creature stands right now, it's only going to work on something that's 1 power or 0 power. That might not be all that strong, but like I said, even if you never use the mentor, this is still a playable limited card. However, in conjunction with other mentor creatures, if this can go up to say a 3/4, and now it can mentor maybe a 2/2 to a 3/3, now we're talking. So this definitely gets better in those Boros mentor builds for sure, and that's where it's going to find its role in draft. But in a sealed deck, sometimes a 2/3 flyer with vigilance for 4 will be just good enough anyway. Enhanced Surveillance, a blue and 1 enchantment uncommon. You may look at an additional 2 cards each time you surveil. Exile this, shuffle your graveyard into your library. This is actually pretty strong if you have a lot of surveil cards. When I play this in standard though, I think it might slow me down just a little too much, unfortunately. It only costs 2. I mean, it doesn't really do anything on its own unless I need to reshuffle my graveyard into my deck right away. Other than that, I'm waiting for an opportunity to surveil to get any value out of it, and it's good value once it happens, but I feel like it's a little too slow in that capacity. Aside from that, though, in Limited, I could see myself playing this if I have enough surveil cards in my deck. The main reason is, in Limited, I'm playing a 40-card deck. If I get a little overboard with the surveilling, I could find myself in a situation, if the game goes long, that I could be concerned about decking myself. Well, this kind of pulls you out of that problem, and I do like that. And also, like I said, it is powerful to go deeper into your deck, especially in limited when you're trying to find your bombs. So for those reasons alone, yeah, I could see myself picking this up relatively early in a draft if I think I'm going to be going down that road. Once I start pulling some Serval cards, yeah, this is going to be a really nice complement to those, no doubt. Omnispell Adept. This is a blue 4 human wizard rare 3/4. Pay a blue and 2 and tap. You may cast an instant or sorcery card from your hand without paying its mana cost. Wow, okay. So here's the thing for me, even though this can be very, very powerful, I think it's a little too slow for standard, unfortunately, because it could be really sweet, but it costs 5. It's going to be a while before you cast it. It doesn't have haste or anything, so you're going to have to wait till it comes back to your turn before you can use that ability, and then you have to have something in your hand to use that ability on, which may or may not be the case. So because it's a little slow, a little clunky, I don't see it happening there. In limited, play this if you have some good instants and sorceries that cost more than 3, basically. Because it's still a sizable creature. Like a 3/4 is not the worst thing in the world. You don't want to play a 3/4 for 5, though. You want to make sure at some point that that ability could be relevant. If you don't feel confident in that, though, skip it. You'll probably find a better creature at the 5 spot. This card, though, is all about Commander for me. I want to play this in Commander, and even though, yes, it's still a target while it's sitting on the battlefield, if it can get back to you, imagine some of the crazy spells you can play with this thing. You'll have huge instants and sorceries, various colors. It could be pretty insane. So that's where I want to put this. Watcher in the Mist. 2 blue and 3. It's a spirit. 3/4 common flying. When this enters the battlefield, Serval 2. This is going to be an awesome limited common for you. High in a draft pack, as a matter of fact. I would take this in the first probably 4 or 5 picks easily. Just because you get a 3/4 flyer for 5 and the Serval 2, which is going to work well with other things in your deck, hopefully. Yeah, this card is going to be fantastic in that capacity. Creeping Chill. Black and 3, sorcery, uncommon. This deals 3 damage to each opponent. You gain 3 life. When this is put into your graveyard from your library, you may exile it. If you do, it deals 3 damage to each opponent and you gain 3 life. Wow, okay. Let's talk limited first with this one. If I'm running any amount of Serval, I'm going to throw this in because there's going to be times where this is a free 6-point life swing. That's pretty sweet. Now, if I draw it, it's still okay. Maybe not the best card in a lot of matchups, but if it's a more aggressive matchup, it's still very good. If I'm getting beat down early, the life gain could be relevant. If it's not an aggressive matchup, paying forward sorcery speed for this is alright, but not amazing. If I had no Serval in my limited deck, maybe I don't main deck it, but I would bring it in an aggressive matchup. However, if I'm in black, I probably have at least a little Serval going on. It's just such a good mechanic, so I'm probably running this way more often than not. Really good uncommon there. What about standard? Do I play it? Well, if there is a Serval deck that's looking for some good payoffs in the future, then maybe it'd see some play. Or you might have a control deck. This is probably more likely. A control build that's running a little Serval for value, and then this comes out of the sideboard to deal with aggressive matchups. I think that's possible. But you know where this card's going to really shine, and I'm not going to say Commander this time, although it does hit all opponents, so that's something, I guess. But it really shines, I think, for Modern. I want to try this out in Modern Dredge. I'm not completely 100% sold yet because it's not great if it ends up in your hands. But if you can get this from your library to your graveyard and just get free 6-point life swings, that could be kind of awesome. So I want to try it out there. I'm not going to say definitely for sure yet until there's a little testing behind it, but I do think it could be good there. Once you go past Modern, Legacy, Vintage, I don't think those Dredge decks want this. I think they're already fast and efficient and they don't need something like this. Overall, this is actually a pretty sweet card. I can't wait to play with this one. Lotless Giant. This is a black and 6 zombie giant uncommon 6/5 with Undergrowth, and when this enters the battlefield, it deals 1 damage to target opponent for each creature card in your graveyard. Here's another card that's for limited, and I could see myself playing it a good percentage of the time if I have it, but there are going to be times you're going to have better, higher end curve things, and if that's the case, then you probably skip this one. It's okay though, it's serviceable. A 6/5 for that casting cost is just fine. The direct damage that it could potentially do when it enters the battlefield definitely brings you a little more value, and that is high variance, but in a game of limited, you should have enough creatures, especially if you're maybe dumping creatures from your deck with Serval in there. Or maybe you're milling yourself with some of the Golgari cards. The value should definitely be there for 7 mana in most cases. So very runnable, maybe not 100% of the time, but very runnable. Ritual of Soot. Alright, this one's kind of cool. 2 black and 2, it's a rare sorcery. Destroy all creatures with converted mana cost 3 or less. It's going to take care of all the small stuff. It's going to take care of tokens. If you have bigger things and you think your opponents are going to have smaller things, this is going to be great for you. In Limited, I would run this even if I do have a lot of smaller things because it's probably still a good panic button. I would just main deck this and have it if I need it. If I'm ahead, maybe I don't have to play it, but it's just good to have in case things aren't going my way. Easy first pick, I think, in a lot of packs, as a matter of fact, in Draft. Standard, do you play it there? Yeah, out of the sideboard for mid-range decks, I think. Control decks might not care that much because they're not running a lot of creatures anyway, but if I'm mid-range with some 4 or 5 casting cost creatures, then hopefully I can knock out what my opponent's doing, but preserve what I'm doing, and that's where this card actually excels. So this is going to be good against maybe like tribal builds that could be coming or have been around, as a matter of fact, when you think of Knights. Or it could be awesome against White Weenie, Selesnya Tokens. All of these are decks that could come along in Standard, if not now, in the future. So no doubt, this definitely will see sideboard play for those circumstances. And also in Commander, if you're going big, you know there's going to be somebody with tokens or something like that, so this could be decent there too. Book Devourer. Red and 5, it's a beast, uncommon 4/5 with trample. When this deals combat damage to a player, you may discard all cards in your hand. If you do, draw that many cards. It's a May ability, I should point out. So, first off, this is too expensive for Standard, so let's not even worry about that. Limited? Do I play this in Limited? I'll be honest with you, this feels really shaky to me. This is one of the cards I've been least impressed with so far. The problem is, yes, it does have trample, so maybe I can get the damage across, but I'm paying 6 mana for this thing, and it's requiring a lot of setup before anything's going to happen. I have a 4/5 for 6. I'm going to have to somehow get it to damage my opponent, which even with the trample is going to be difficult in limited games that are very gummy on the ground. And then I have to have some sort of payoff. So I'm hanging on to cards that are either bad cards or extra lands or I don't know what, dumping them in my graveyard to get to more cards, which maybe I'll hit something good then, and it's nice to cycle through your deck. But I just feel like it's going to be really difficult to pull that off and make it mean something. Now, maybe I'm trying to discard something for reanimation or something along those lines. I don't know. But even in a draft deck, it doesn't feel like a very good game plan. In Commander, this feels inconsistent. You're going to have a lot of big creatures on the battlefield. It's going to be harder to get the damage across, probably even in that format. I'm just not feeling this one anywhere, honestly. This next one's a Japanese language preview, loosely translated. It's Detour, uncommon, green and 3 sorcery. Search your library for up to 2 basic lands or gates and put them onto the battlefield tapped. For 4 casting cost sorcery speed, I don't see this doing much in Standard because there's just better ways to ramp or fix colors there that are more economical. In Limited, though, yeah, I could play this and be pretty happy with it. I mentioned a few times in the other videos that in Sealed or Draft, I do think you're going to have to go 3 or 4 colors at least a percentage of the time. And this is a card that's going to help smooth that out a little bit. It also grabs gates, which could be really nice if you need to fix your mana. And even though it's a tad slow, I think it's going to be worth it. And it does ramp you up, so hopefully you'll catch up maybe on the next turn or so. It is another card, too, for the Commander players that want to play with gates. You can throw this one in there as well. Alright, another Japanese language preview. This is Conclave Centaur. It's an uncommon 2 white, 2 green, Centaur Knight, Vigilance 4/4. When this dies, create 2 green and white, 2/2 Elf Knight creature tokens with Vigilance. I actually like the idea of this card. Like, I would consider for a moment putting this in the Knight deck in Standard, but here's the problem for me. It's the casting cost. I think the Knight deck is still going to want to be mostly Orzhov. I do think we could see it go Abzan. But if it goes Abzan and you're in 3 colors, a casting cost of 2 white and 2 green, even with the tools that we have in Standard, which are not bad, I think might be just a little too inconsistent for what you're getting here. It's not a bad card, but it's also not off the charts crazy either. So would I play it if the casting cost was a little different in Standard? Yeah, I'd want to try it out. I'll still try it out. But I think right now it's leaving me a little skeptical. 4/4 Vigilance Knight's kind of nice if it's buffed a little bit. That's very good when it dies, if it doesn't get exiled. And remember, Vraska's Contempt is out there and it's going to be pretty prevalent. But when it does die, being able to then turn it into a couple 2/2 Knights with Vigilance is also very relevant. It makes it persistent, difficult to deal with. But like I said, I'm just not sold because of the casting cost right now. In Limited, yeah, play it. If you can swing the casting cost in your Draft or Sealed deck, play this. It's going to be awesome for you. It's going to be really tough to deal with. And also, whether it's just the big 4/4 Vigilance creature that can attack and also be used then to tap for Convoke, or just getting the other Vigilance creatures later on, which could do the same thing under the right circumstances, could be really great in a Selesnya deck. Crackling Drake, 2 red, 2 blue, Drake, uncommon, star 4, flying. The power is going to be equal to the total number of instant and sorcery cards you own in exile and in your graveyard, and when this enters the battlefield, draw a card. Alright, for limited, I really like this a lot. If I have some instants and sorceries in my deck, even if I don't have a ton, I'd like the card because it replaces itself. The casting cost, again, maybe is not for every build. You don't want to be splashing red, for example, and try to play this. But if you're comfortable swinging the 2 blue, 2 red, play this thing, even if it's only like a 2/4 flyer and it replaced itself when it came into play, that's really not bad for 4 mana. So I do feel like the economy's here. And if I'm playing more instants and sorceries, if I'm playing Jumpstart, so obviously the Exile is meant to work with Jumpstart in this particular set, then yeah, you know what? This is going to actually be pretty decent. So this could be stronger in some builds than others, but I think many times it's just flat out playable, regardless. In Standard, I think it's possible this sees play if an Izzet instant and sorcery heavy deck can get there. The main reason I still think it's even possible is because we did see people trying to brew that in previous metas. It didn't quite get there, but for a while on Magic Arena, before we had the full Standard available, it was a deck that was actually pretty decent. There's a chance in the smaller card pool, we still have things like Opt-Out there and such, that maybe someone can make it work, especially considering the fact that we're getting some good Izzet cards in this set. So I won't count it out, but if nothing else, definitely a nice limited card. And in Commander, if you play a lot of instants or sorceries, this is another decent creature for you too. Dimir, Spybug. Black and blue, it's an insect uncommon 1/1 with flying and menace, and whenever you surveil, put a +1/+1 counter on this. So for limited, this will be fantastic for you. Yes, a little fragile at first, but you know you're going to have a lot of surveil if you're in these colors probably. And if you're surveilling even just a little bit, this is a creature that's going to be difficult to block. Eventually, your opponent's going to have to burn a removal spell on this silly little 2-drop. They're not going to be happy, but if they don't, it could get out of hand. If they get a couple flyers out, they might be able to hold it at bay, but that's not going to happen all the time, and this could do some serious work for you. Standard, yeah, I do think it sees standard play in control builds, perhaps, that are running surveil cards, just simply because it's really cheap. It only costs 2. You can kind of sneak it out and still hold back your mana for your counter magic or draw spells. And even if you surveil once, twice, let's say it's a 3/3 flying menace, yes, it's still very fragile, but if you can defend it a little bit, attack in a few turns in a row, all of a sudden it's starting to take away a big portion of your opponent's life total. It's cheap enough, and I think the upside's strong enough there anyway. Disinformation Campaign. Black, blue, and 1, enchantment, uncommon. When this enters the battlefield, you draw a card, and each opponent discards a card. Whenever you surveil, return Disinformation Campaign to its owner's hand. In limited, this actually feels really good to me. I'm going to play this for 3, draw a card so it automatically just replaces itself, and my opponent has to discard if they have anything in their hand. And once I play it once, sure, it's kind of telegraphing itself a little bit, but then if I surveil, it goes back to my hand. I can play it again later, do the same thing, and I really like the eventual efficiency that you get from it. But even if you just play it once, just replacing itself and making your opponent discard a card is not horrible. Maybe not worth the 3 mana, but not horrible. You really want to use this probably 2 or 3 times, though, over the course of the game to get your money's worth out of it for sure. With that being said, I might not main deck this if I don't have a lot of surveil cards, but if I have enough surveil, I'll run this and be pretty happy with it, I think. As far as standard goes, I think it's a little too slow, a little too clunky there. You don't want to play it just for that little bit of advantage and then have to return it to your hand later to play it again. It's just not fast enough there, unfortunately. Commander, if you got some flicker effects behind this thing, could be interesting because it does impact each opponent. This one comes to us from a Chinese simplified language preview. It's Ladev Captain, uncommon, white, green, and 1, Elf Knight, 2/2. When this attacks, you may tap any number of untapped creatures you control. It gets +1/+1 for each creature that you tapped this way until end of turn. And if you pay a white, a green, and 3, create a 1/1 white soldier creature token with lifelink. Okay, so it is a knight, but I don't see this knight working into any sort of Abzan deck in standard or anything like that. Don't think it's quite good enough. In limited, though, it's okay. I actually like the mana sink more than anything. 3 casting costs 2/2. That doesn't feel real good, especially 2 different colors. Now, granted, when it attacks, I can tap a bunch of my other creatures to make this a big thing, but it doesn't have trample, it doesn't have evasion, it can still be trump blocked, and I might have a bunch of 1/1s if I'm in Selesnya. But if I'm tapping 2/2s, 3/3s, 4/4s to give this +1/+1 till end of turn, I don't know, that doesn't feel like good economy to me. So there are times where having a big creature is better than having a lot of small creatures, granted, and every once in a while it might pay off for you, but I think it's very inconsistent. Now the mana sink, white, green, and 3, to get a 1/1 white soldier creature token with lifelink, it's actually pretty relevant, especially in a board stall. You're playing sealed or a draft game that's just going on, no one can get by. Well, every turn you make one or two of these as time goes on. And eventually you're just going to win that game because you're putting something on the battlefield every turn. Your opponent's going to be drawing lands a percentage of the time, and you just pull ahead. So because of that alone, I'm playing this card. As a matter of fact, it might be a relatively high pick uncommon for me in draft, but it's mostly because of that last effect. Next one is another Chinese simplified language preview. It's Giant Soldier, loosely translated. It's an uncommon, white, red 4, creature type, Giant Soldier, Vigilance 5/5, and when this attacks, it deals 1 damage to each creature defending player controls. Chain Whirler, this is not, but it's going to be fine for you in limited. A 5/5 for 6, and with that ability and Vigilance, yeah, I'll play it and probably be relatively happy with it. Maybe it doesn't make my deck all the time if I have better things at the upper portion of my curve, but if I don't, it's very playable. It's just fine. It will be good against maybe some Selesnya strategies if they're making small creatures as well, so if I don't main deck it, I might sideboard it in against those decks. Swiftblade Vindicator. White, red, human soldier, rare 1/1, double strike, vigilance, and trample. 2 casting costs, a little bit fragile, but you want to play this with Mentor or Anthem effects or something along those lines, and this could actually be quite good. Now, if there is a aggro deck in Standard that's in Boros colors, and again, we have to see some good Mentor coming over the next week or so, we have to see more Anthem effects probably, but if we can get there, then yeah, this might actually see Standard play. Now, if it doesn't turn out that that's the most reliable form of aggro deck, then perhaps this will be more relegated to limited, but it will be a good limited card there too, alongside the Mentor creatures. So you want to Mentor this thing, quickly make it a 2/2 double strike vigilance trample. Hopefully after that get a 3/3, maybe throw an Anthem effect down. Fragile at first, definitely, it has to survive, but it could actually do some work for you. I'll play it and be pretty happy with it, I think, if I'm in that build. If you don't have ways to enhance this card though, obviously skip it. Trostani Discordant. Alright, here's another mythic. It's a white, green, and 3 legendary creature dryad 1/4. Other creatures you control get +1/+1 when this enters the battlefield. Create 2 1/1 white soldier creature tokens with lifelink. At the beginning of your end step, each player gains control of all creatures they own. That's interesting. Alright, so is this good? Yeah, this is real good. Let's talk limited first. It's a mythic, you won't see it much, but if you can get this card and be in those colors, play it, it's going to be awesome for you. All creatures getting +1/+1 in this set and in these colors is going to be fantastic. It also creates a couple of little creatures which will effectively be 2/2 lifelinkers. As long as this is in play, that's great. You're getting tons of economy here. And that last clause will, I don't know, come into effect every once in a while. There is a card we're going to look at in a moment where someone could steal something you own, so won't happen often probably, but every once in a while it might matter. What about Standard? Yeah, I think the economy is good enough for this to see Standard play for a couple of reasons. One, just the card itself. I mean, you're actually getting 5/8 power toughness on the battlefield for 5 when you play this, and some of that has lifelink. That's kind of awesome, not to mention all the other buffs that hopefully will be going on. Now, in Standard, that last clause becomes more relevant because of Hostage Taker, which is a great card, and I think that we'll see more play post-rotation. A lot of the reason it saw less and less play, even though it was still seeing play in the last meta, was because there were so many other great cards in those colors it was competing with. But with some of those rotating out, like the Scarab God and such, I do think that Hostage Taker could become a bigger force going forward. So I'm sure that's why they put this card in the set, to kind of keep that at bay a little bit, and that's a good idea. It is legendary, which of course can be a little awkward when it comes to deck building from time to time, but I don't think that matters all that much. So yeah, I think this is a strong Standard card. It starts to get a little high when you're talking like Modern or something like that, but at least for Standard, for Limited, this thing is going to be fantastic, I have no doubt. Commander, Selesnya token players too, by the way. You'll want a copy of this. Piston Fist Cyclops. 2 hybrid Izzet mana and 1 Cyclops common 4/3 with Defender. As long as you've cast an instant or sorcery spell this turn, this can attack as though it didn't have Defender. So this is another card that's relegated to limited, but do I play it there? Yeah, I think most of the time I do. I want to gum up the ground, especially in blue, slow things down a little bit because blue usually has slower starts. So a 4/3 Defender for 3 actually feels pretty decent to me, even if I never attack with this thing. I'm not actually that concerned about the attacking clause because by the time I play an instant or sorcery, is attacking in with a 4/3 all that good? It might trade with another creature or something like that. It's not super exciting though. Occasionally it might be good if I have a lot of like burn or something where I can take creatures off the board and attack with this. It might get kind of crazy. but that's not going to happen all that often. Most of the time, you're going to be in a board stall just staring at your opponent anyway. But this is a very good blocker, especially against some of those more aggressive builds that you could come across. So for that reason alone, I'll play it and be pretty happy with it. Connive and Concoct. All right, this is the split card. This is a sorcery, both sides. It's rare. First side, you got 2 Dimir, hybrid mana, and 2 gain control of target creature with power 2 or less. Let's talk about that one first. Pretty good on the fly and limited if you need to steal something small, especially something with a good ability. It does feel a little desperate, like if you're using Connive instead of Concoct, you're probably behind and you're just trying to catch up a little bit any way you can, but that's just fine. Maybe it buys you some time. Concoct, black, blue, and 3, sorcery, surveil 3, then return a creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield. Okay, that's interesting. A little reminiscent of Rise from the Grave. However, Rise from the Grave can hit any graveyard. It turns the thing into a zombie too, which sometimes is relevant. But instead, this gives you the Surveil 3. So if you don't have anything in your graveyard, you can dig. Especially, again, if you're desperate, that might be good. So in limited, though, this is still going to be awesome for you because taking something back from the graveyard, putting it directly into play, that could be kind of sweet. And even if it's nothing grand, just taking a substantial creature back in a game of limited could mean the difference of being in a board stall or pulling ahead a little bit. So I do like this card quite a bit for limited. I do think this is a easily first pickable rare in many, many packs. And I'll be happy to play this in sealed or draft if I'm lucky enough to get it. What about standard with this one? Well, it's a little slow. It's sorcery speed and the cost being 4 or 5. It just feels a little clunky, unfortunately. I'm not going to completely count it out, though, just because there have been a number of cards in past sets that are still around in standard that contribute well to the possibility to a potential reanimation deck. This could maybe just be the piece it needs along with rotation to tip the scales. I do feel like, especially losing a lot of the aggro cards that we are losing, maybe if the format slows down enough, a deck with reanimation as a focus could be possible. And if that's the case, then alright, this would see play. I'm not 100% sold on that, though. Like I said, it does feel a little slow. I don't know if it's going to keep up even with the stuff that's staying behind in standard right now. Glaive of the Guild Pact. It costs 2. It's an artifact equipment, uncommon. Equip cost is 3. Equipped creature gets +1/+0 for each gate you control and has vigilance and menace. Alright, for limited, this might be fine if I have room in my build for it. The more guild gates I have, obviously, the better this is going to be. So if I draft a bunch of the gates, maybe I have 4 or 5 or something like that, this becomes a little bit better. And if I don't, if I have 1 or 2, it's still okay if I need it because it still gives something vigilance and menace. So even if I don't have a gate out, I can give a little evasion and the vigilance to something. So yeah, it's not the worst thing in the world, but for 2, 3 to equip, I'm probably finding better things most of the time, unless I have a lot of guild gates. Now, Commander, again, I mentioned this a few times, but there is a gate deck out there. It's another card for that deck. It's getting better and better all the time. Well, with that being said, those are the cards for today. Tomorrow, we're going to be back with our Market Watch like we do every Saturday, and there's actually some impact already from these preview cards. You'll definitely want to check that out tomorrow. And then when we get more previews, most likely on Monday, we'll continue with this series. If anything significant gets previewed over the course of the weekend, I will come back with another video. If it's something smaller, then I'll just roll it into Monday's video. But until next time, hey, thanks for watching. Please remember to like and subscribe and have a great day. Hey, thanks for watching. This video is made possible by the generous support of viewers like you on Patreon. Check out the description below for links to our Patreon page as well as our Amazon affiliate store, where a small percentage of all sales will also help support the channel. Finally, if you haven't had a chance yet to subscribe, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any new videos on Heroes and Legends. Talk to you again soon, and have a great day.